We are here to flip the 196, straight talk with Ron Ruman, Democrat candidate for the Pennsylvania House of Representatives, the 196 legislative district that Seth Grove left vacant. So welcome, Ron.
Thank you, Sandra.
Thank you, with SADOC With Sandra. We want to get to know Ron Ruman for the 196 and see how he is bringing the power back to the people. Many voters don't know that they are in the 196. Let's start with explaining who are in the 196 so they can stop and listen.
Sure, absolutely. And again, thank you for this great opportunity to speak to the voters. So the 196th State House District is made up of most of Dover Township. The township has 4 voting precincts, and precincts 1, 3, and 4 are in this district. So that's anything east of Carlisle Road. The borough of Dover is in it, and west of Carlisle Road, basically south of Palomino Road. Anything north of Palomino and west of 74 is not. West Manchester Township, North Codorus Township, Jackson Township, Heidelberg and Paradise Townships, Spring Grove Borough, Seven Valleys Borough, and New Salem Borough. So that's what makes up the 196. Most of the Dover School District, about 80% of the West York School District, and the entire Spring Grove District except for Jefferson Borough.
And for all of you who live in that district, May 19th is your opportunity to vote for change. And it doesn't matter if you're Democrat, Republican, or Independent, all of you can come out to vote on May 19th for Ron Ruman.
Absolutely, Sandra, and thank you for that. So, especially the independents, because you're going to think you can't vote because it's primary day, but this time you can. And one of the things that I will fight for if I get to Harrisburg is to make sure you can vote in all primary elections. I think it's wrong you can't. You pay taxes like the rest of us. You're registered voters. Pennsylvania is one of just 9 states in the country that has completely closed primaries. It's time to change that. So independents, come out and vote for me, because if I get the chance at Harrisburg, I'm going to vote for you.
And there are some bills, at least one bill to open the primary. And so again, if you elect Ron Ruman, that'll be another vote to do so everybody can have a voice. So Ron, why you? Why this position?
Well, I think we have a unique opportunity this year with the trends of everything that is happening in the country and the state. It's an open seat. And I think folks are listening to what I'm saying when I go and talk to voters, which is I will listen to all views. I may not agree with 100% of your position on an issue or someone else's position, but what I will do whenever I can is take parts of those different ideas and see if we can't bring them together to forge a practical compromise solution to the issue that we're facing. I think we need to do that a lot more, and I'm getting a lot of good feedback on that idea that we need to listen to each other a lot more and stop yelling at each other and take different ideas and bring them together. I don't think we're as far apart on a lot of issues as we think we are. And the other thing I will pledge to do that I know I can keep, these 2 pledges, that one and this one. I will always treat every person with dignity and respect every single day, and I will support state policies and laws that say as a society we will always treat everyone with respect and dignity.
And that's what we need in today's age.
Yeah, I think so.
So what is your connection to the district? You know, who are you?
Yep. Well, my wife and I have lived, we'll be married 41 years in June. We've lived here in York County. I've been here since we got married. I've lived in this district now for 26 years. We've both been very active in our community. I'm currently an elected supervisor in West Manchester Township in my 5th year on the board there. I was on the Planning Commission in West Manchester for 18 years before that, served 4 years on the County Planning Commission, and I was 5 years on the New York City Zoning Hearing Board when we bought our first house. That was in the city. I'm also a member of the St. Rose of Lima Knights of Columbus. We're pretty active in our community. I am the president of the Windy Hill Senior Center Board of Directors. That's in Spring Grove, but it serves a lot of this area. A lot of folks from West Manchester are members there. So and that's a really important place for seniors to have some place to go to really enjoy and improve their quality of life. I served on the SPCA board of directors in York County in the 1990s, and also for 15 years I was a member of the York County chapter of the Penn State Alumni Association board of directors here. So we've been involved in our community for a long time. I think it's very important that you be involved. We get a lot from our community. We need to give back. Our daughter went through the West York schools, so I say we are band parents, because once a band parent, always a band parent.
Absolutely. Thankfully, where independents can vote for you in this special election on May 19th.
Yes.
So knowing that and knowing the district that you're in, how would you define your political identity? You know, how would you relate to all across the board?
Well, I took a survey. So I'm getting a lot of surveys these days, and there was one that said, "This is, look, we're not out to get you." And I looked at the questions, and they weren't. And it was, "Where do you stand politically?" And I came down almost in the center. I've always been a political moderate, so I was just about dead center. And I think that's where I am. And honestly, I think that's where most people are. I don't think most folks are far left or far right. So from a political standpoint, I'm a moderate, but I think that varies a bit by issue. Not necessarily, maybe a little more conservative on some, more progressive on others, but I'm a moderate, and I think that's another reason I feel it's so important that we listen to different ideas, because even folks coming from different political perspectives, there are parts of a lot of those ideas that most of us can get behind. So being a moderate, I think that enhances my ability to do that, and to be able to, and to want to listen to all views. Not everybody wants to. They want to go and represent a certain viewpoint or a certain group of folks. That's not me.
Absolutely, that is true. And so how do you listen? Where do you go to hear from the community?
Well, I mentioned many of the groups that I'm involved with. Certainly at the Senior Center, I hear from a lot of folks there who have concerns about things like property taxes. Their electric bills have gone up. We know the cost of living is out of hand. And that is in large part due to some of the bad policies that we're getting from the federal government, and frankly from the state government too. And so I hear a lot from folks out there who are many living on fixed incomes. They're struggling. We have friends of all ages, and certainly we know young families trying to buy homes. There's a shortage of housing. Housing is very expensive, so they're concerned about trying to get their first home. Just being involved in my church, I hear from a range of people about concerns that they have on different issues. And because I'm a township supervisor now and have been for 5 years, people come to me with issues, and they ask questions about things that are going on, problems they may be having with the township, or wanting to get something done. So there's a variety of ways that people come to me, and because I've been involved in politics and government for so long, I worked as a state government staff member in Harrisburg for more than a quarter of a century, and by the way, I worked for 4 governors, 2 of each party, and I think that's important. People kind of know that I've been involved, and I'm kind of up on what's happening, so I'm sort of the person that people have been coming to for a long time to ask about government-related questions.
That's good. You're the go-to person.
Yeah.
Now, you mentioned your church, so that a lot of people don't understand nor believe that Democrats are actually people of faith.
Oh, yeah. Well,
so how does your faith coincide with your political activity or running for office?
it's very important in my life. It always has been. I was born and I've been a Catholic my whole life, and I believe that my faith guides me in my principles, and that's one reason that I absolutely will always listen to everyone and treat everyone with respect. If there's one thing that my faith teaches, is that we are all God's children, and we all deserve to be treated with respect, and viewpoints need to be listened to. So my faith is extremely important to me, that just in the way I treat other people. I may disagree with someone on a political issue, but that doesn't mean I can or should or ever will disrespect them as a person, or that they shouldn't have my respect as a person. And I've been attending the Dover UCC church for the last year and a half too. I have some friends there, and they kind of said that, yeah, I think you might like the message there, and I do. So I kind of have really 2 church homes right now, which is nice. So both those traditions, I think, speak very much to the need to respect each other and to to really work for peace, whether it's peace in our local community or peace in the larger community. And I know the UCC talks about that a lot, and if you have been following Pope Leo of late, he has absolutely been very straightforward, and I have great respect for that man in talking about the fact that we need to work for peace and not glorify war.
When you win this position, and then especially starting out May 19th and then going on to November election as well, where would you have your offices so that you can, again, continue to listen to the community?
Well, I haven't really thought about where physically the office would be located, but I would look for a location that it would be easy to get to in the district. So possibly somewhere off of Route 74, which is kind of easily accessed, certainly from the Dover, West Manchester area, and even from Spring Grove, if you come up 116, you can get there. I know that Seth Grove had an office for a while on the Westgate Center there. I thought that was pretty easy to get to right off Kenneth Road. But I would look for a place that is, as accessible to as many people as possible.
So what would be your top, say, 3 priorities?
I hear from folks, and I certainly experience it myself, because I think I'm very representative of this district. We're middle-income folks. We always were. We worked hard, and I think that's what this district is. It's a middle-income district of hard workers. So I have, in addition to what I talked about with just treating folks with respect and listening to the different ideas, but on specific issues, there are 3 things. One is property taxes. Folks are concerned about property taxes, and they've gone up. Most of us have had school tax increases in the last few years. We had a big county tax increase again this year. Many of our municipalities have had to raise the property taxes. I have a plan that I think is a workable plan that would reduce our property taxes. It wouldn't eliminate them. I'm not in favor of eliminating them, but we need to stop relying so much on them. So I have a plan to do that by changing our local income tax from an earned income tax to a personal income tax. Right now it's just on wages and salaries. All of our other income taxes at the state and federal level are personal income taxes. So wherever you earn your money of investments and so on, that's taxed. This is a 1%. The local tax is just 1%. But if we brought in that additional income, the folks in Harrisburg in the Revenue Department told me a few years ago when I asked about it, on average that would bring in about 15% more revenue. So my plan is then for every dollar that schools and municipalities would bring in an additional money from expanding the tax on income, they would have a dollar for dollar reduction in the residential property taxes, just the residential, because folks would be paying a slightly higher income tax to make up for that. There would be no reduction in the business property taxes because businesses would not be paying anything extra otherwise. So that would be a meaningful reduction in the property taxes for folks. Also, I would join Governor Shapiro, who mentioned in his budget address, something that I had talked about prior to that we have to make data centers pay for the electricity they use. A lot of folks don't like data centers. They don't want them at all. Well, I think they're going to be here. But they have to be part of our community. They cannot come in and take over our community. And so the governor is working on a plan to require data centers to pay for the electricity they use and not foist those costs onto residents and businesses. And I'm 100% behind that, as well as putting in significant environmental regulations to make sure that those centers are part of our community and not a burden on our community. And the third one is also related to our schools, and that is to rein in the excess funding of cyber charter schools. We are way overfunding them now, and cyber charter schools are good. We have 3 friends who have children in cyber charter schools, and that is the best option for them. Mm-hmm. But right now they're being funded way beyond what they need. They're buying buildings all across the state, and these are cyber schools. Right. So they may need a building for conferences occasionally, but and if they just got funded from the state at the roughly $8,000 per pupil level that our local public schools get from Harrisburg, that would bring back about $650 million a year to our public schools. And the 3 districts in this legislative district, Dover, West York, and Spring Grove, would get back about $2 million a year. That's money that the school boards could use to not have to raise your property taxes. So those are 3 ways I would help to control our costs of living through property taxes and our electric rates.
Many mothers and fathers are bogged down with working and trying, whether it's paying rent or mortgage, taking care of their children, finding appropriate daycare as well as schooling, whatever it is. that they're not even paying attention to politics.
Right.
And even the three issues that you broke down, that you explained, they may not understand. They may not understand how does it affect their day-to-day living.
Mm-hmm.
So are you to break it down a little further?
I can try.
Okay.
So if you look at the first one, the property tax reduction, if we assume the school and municipal tax for an average home in York County is $4,000 a year. If we do a 15% reduction, that's a $600 cut in the school and municipal property taxes. Now, if your investment income, because you're already paying the local tax on your wages and salaries, if you have an investment income in this scenario under $60,000 a year, which I'm going to guess is most working families, and honestly probably most seniors as well, you're going to save overall. Because to pay $600 on the 1% tax on your investment income, you'd have to have an income of $60,000 on average.
Right.
So most folks are going to save money under that plan, probably at least a few $100s a year. So it's a TAP credit that you might be buying for your child as you have a young family trying to save for college. It might be your utility bills for 2 or 3 months. It might be a month's worth of groceries. You know what the grocery prices are. So that's how that would impact you. With the electric rates, one of the concerns about the data centers is they use so much electricity that they're going to come in, and because they're going to use so much, that's going to drive up the prices. But if we say to them, you have to pay for those additional prices. You can't just go into the grid and take it and everybody's costs go up. That's going to help keep your electric bill. It may not lower it, but it will keep it from rising. And actually, the data centers have said, and we have one coming to West Manchester, they do, because of the electricity they use, they typically do pay for upgrades to the transmission lines in an area. And very often, because those new lines are more efficient than the old ones, they have actually, and they told us this in a public hearing, so it's on the record, that they have actually seen electric rates decrease in areas where they have put a data center in because of those increased efficiencies in transmission. That's fine, but then they can't turn around on the back end and say because of how much they're using, it's going to go back up. So that will keep your electric rates at least from rising, and hopefully maybe even falling a little bit. And the cyber charter schools, right now, they are public schools, so your local school district must fund every child who lives in that public school district that attends a cyber charter school. The funding formula is out of whack right now. We are way overpaying for those students, not only in just the basic funding, but special ed. Special ed students, the formula has to change so that they are funded on the needs of the children. Right now, it's a numbers-based thing. And so a child may have certain needs that would cost X, but because of just the number, they're getting 2X funding for that child. And because your local public school has to pay for that, that's a burden on them with your local property taxes. And the more that your school district has to fund those cyber charters excessively, that drives up your property taxes. If we just get back to that fair level of funding so that the cyber charters have what they need, we'll bring that money back to your local school district. And as I mentioned, the 3 districts in this legislative district, Dover, Spring Grove, West York, would get back about $2 million a year. It's $2 million worth of your local taxes they don't have to raise. That takes the pressure off raising your property taxes. So maybe that helps a little bit to understand why these proposals would be helpful to people.
And how about to the families who have their children in cyber schools? Can you assure them that there will be no loss in quality of education?
There should not be. Again, the audits have been done by 2 successive auditors general in Pennsylvania. They're the top elected official that audits all the books for Pennsylvania to make sure that our tax money is being spent as the law says it's supposed to be. Eugene D. Pasquale, who was from York County, was a Democrat, did this audit about 6 or 7 years ago, and Tim DeFore, who is from Dauphin County and is a Republican, did the same audit 2 years ago. They both came to the same conclusion, that these schools are vastly overspending for the needs of their students, because again, these are cyber schools, so they're mostly online. And
so they don't need buildings or multiple buildings at least.
They need a building for conferences or for testing and all that, but there are a couple of these schools that are particularly egregious. They're buying buildings across the state, and they have huge fund balances. Now, some fund balance is prudent, but theirs is, they have hundreds of millions of dollars in fund balances right now. So I absolutely do not want to harm the the students in those cyber schools, because as I said, we have 3 friends whose children are there, and that's where they should be. It's best for them. And one of the parents of one of those children even told me, because she asked me about that. She said, what's this cyber school thing here? And I explained, she said, I agree. She said, my child has brought home an iPad, they brought home book bags, they brought backpacks, all these supplies. She said, I'm giving them away to friends and our cousins because we don't need them. And she said, I've often wondered, where are they getting all this money? Well, they're getting it from us. And it's more than they need.
Let's talk about economics. How do you see the current condition in York County in the 196, and how would you stimulate job growth?
Sure. I mean, overall, we're not doing badly here. I think compared to much of Pennsylvania and really much of the country, York County in the 196 is not in bad shape. But we can always certainly do better, and there are many folks struggling. So ideas that I would have is, one of the other things I want to do is I want to increase our funding, and this is tough to do because I'm not wanting to come for more tax dollars, but I want to try and funnel more of the state funding we do have to technical schools. I think for York Tech at the K-12 level, and then post-secondary places like Thaddeus Stevens and Penn Tech, and I was really dismayed to see HAC just recently cut a number of programs, and they're going to lay off 100 people. We need those technical schools because there's a crying need for those skilled tradespeople. We need them to build our buildings, to maintain our buildings, to work on our power lines, and try and get an electrician or a plumber to come to your house. So I really want to bolster the funding for those technical schools because we need those folks. We need the skilled tradespeople right here in York County, right here in the 196th. And that would also be a help in the cost of living because those post-secondary degrees at technical schools typically are much less costly than your traditional 4-year college. I also have a plan to reform the Penn State Board of Trustees. I'm a Penn Stater, but the leaders of my school have lost their way. They have ripped the heart out of this community and 6 others across the state by closing campuses, never talked to us, never talked to local people and said, we have a little deficit here, we're losing some students, what can we do to work together to change that? They just closed them. They're going to deprive hundreds of York County students a year and thousands of Pennsylvania students a year of an affordable start to their college education. We know people whose children never would have gone to college if they hadn't been able to live at home, work a part-time job, and get those first 2 years here at Penn State, New York. So we need to change that. That will help stimulate our economy. We're also losing a couple hundred good jobs on the campus. That will help stimulate our economy by keeping those people here and keeping them in York County so that they can bring their talents here. And that will help bring the cost of college down because Penn State's our largest university. If we control costs there, that's going to have a ripple effect. And one of the other things, Sandra, that I think would fit in with that is and it goes back to the data centers and the need for electricity. Part of the reason our electricity is going up so much is that the demand for electricity is increasing, not just because of data centers, but everything we do now needs electricity. We need to have more electricity generated, and that means we need to use all the fuels that we have. So I'm a person that believes that we need to use all of our energy sources. Natural gas. Pennsylvania is blessed with great natural gas reserves. So I do support fracking. I worked at the Department of Environmental Protection when they wrote the first fracking regulations back in 2006, 2007 under Governor Rendell. They were very stringent. They've been strengthened since then. Now, there have been a few accidents and spills, as there will be in anyone, but I believe they've been enforced pretty well, and the sanctions have been there when those companies had infractions. We need the natural gas, but we also need to support renewables of all kinds, wind, solar, but especially hydro. We've got a huge hydro manufacturing plant right here in this district. Voith Hydro employs hundreds of people, plus the suppliers, hundreds more people. So if we can increase the use of hydro, we have the thing in Pennsylvania called the Alternative Energy Portfolio Standard. That was passed 25 years ago. It says X percentage of the energy generated, electricity generated in Pennsylvania must come from renewable sources. And that rises incrementally over time. One of the things I would fight for is to make hydro a greater part of that, because that would help Voith and their suppliers. So that would help us to create jobs here in York County.
How would you balance economic growth and worker protection?
Well, I don't think you can have one without the other, and they don't have to be exclusive. They shouldn't be. I'm happy to say that I have the support of IBEW Local 229. I was an IBEW member early in my career, and I worked at WHP Television. I actually served as president of that union for a year, and economic growth and worker protection actually should go hand in hand, because when workers are protected, they're not being injured, they're not getting sick, they're better workers. And economic growth should never be at the cost of worker safety. So I would absolutely support maintaining and, if need be, strengthening our worker protections here in Pennsylvania, so that people who go to work, whether it's in an office, whether it's on a factory floor, whether it's out on the transmission lines or in a farm field, that they have the protections they need to do their job safely. Because that's the humane thing to do, and that's faith. Okay, people should work with dignity, but just from a pure dollars and cents standpoint, you don't want an injured worker. That's the last thing you want. It's going to cost you money. It's going to cost companies in workers' comp costs, because every time they have a workers' comp payout, their rates go up. And you don't want someone off the job for a period of time. You have that skilled person, you've trained them, they know what they're doing. Now other people have to pick up the slack, or you have to bring someone else in who probably isn't as good at that job and doesn't know it as well. So I see them as mutually beneficial and not mutually exclusive.
Understood. So you are vying for a seat where the representative sat in it for about 17 years. Have you looked at what was done to see what you would like to do differently?
Well, I think to a degree.
Okay.
To a degree, I think I don't know that. I think it's almost doesn't matter who was here before. I have to bring my own stamp to this, and I go back to the idea of working cooperatively. I think that's so important. We have a slim majority in the House now for Democrats. I hope we add to that. And I think there's a reasonable chance Democrats will capture the Senate this year in the state. They need to pick up 2 to have a working, or, be tied with the lieutenant governor's vote. We'd have a majority in terms of committee chairs and all that stuff. But regardless, it's going to be close. And there are going to be issues where folks who are come from different parts of the state and have different backgrounds are going to have different perspectives.
Right.
And I think we need those different perspectives, and I need to listen to people who may come from inner city Philadelphia, who have a perspective from that I may not understand, as well as people who come from very rural Tioga County or Potter County, because their views are important too.
Absolutely.
And I think that was perhaps lost. I think Seth, when he first went in, did that a fair amount. And I think as time went on, he did it less. And I know, look, you got to deal with your colleagues up there and people in your party, and I understand that there's always party pressure, but you have to be able to say, I have to represent my constituents as well. Can't just do what the party says or wants all the time. I think I'll agree with them much more often than not, but there are always going to be issues. But I think the idea of listening to the different perspectives gives you a better idea and a better understanding of what those issues might be. We have pretty good environmental standards in Pennsylvania right now, and I don't know that there was a real attack on those by the former representative here. I didn't see that, so I think that would continue. But one area, I guess, something that would be different that does come to mind is funding for transit systems.
Okay.
That's been a big budget sticking point the last couple of years, and it's been portrayed by some Republicans as being an issue for SEPTA, the Southeastern Pennsylvania Transit Authority, which is Philly and the suburban counties of Philly, which is the largest transit system in the state, and then the Pittsburgh area transit is the second. But that's really not true.
Right.
This is a statewide issue. We have rapid transit here in York that many constituents in the 196th district use. They use it to get to work, they use it to get to doctor's appointments, and I mentioned I'm the president of the Senior Center, Windy Hill Senior Center Board of Directors. There are 126 seniors throughout York County who use rapid transit to get to the various senior centers.
Right.
I can tell you, Sandra, those senior centers are lifelines for those folks. And without that transit, they would be stuck at home. They wouldn't see their friends. They wouldn't be able to take part in the activities that they love, have lunch with their friends. There are activities, they bring in speakers for history, they have music, they teach them technology, they have art classes. All those things that these folks would be deprived of without rapid transit. So it's that will bolster our economy. We need that transit system.
Yes.
Folks think we don't, but we do. Thousands of Yorktownians use it to get to work. Thousands use it for vital things like medical appointments, but 126, maybe that doesn't sound like a real big number to you, but each one of those people is somebody's grandparent or somebody's parent or somebody's aunt or uncle or friend, and they need that to have a quality of life that they wouldn't have otherwise. So I would really try and change that narrative and say your mass transit issue is not a SEPTA issue. It is a Pennsylvania issue, and by gosh, it's a York County issue for quality of life and for our economy.
And I think that's important to bring it home, because sometimes when they say, oh, that's Philadelphia, or that's Pittsburgh, so and that's not us, we need to take care of our own. So understanding that all of these issues affect us as well. Very important.
It is, and we need to talk about that. And I would absolutely be that advocate and say, hey, it's not a Philly and Pittsburgh issue. Yes, they're the biggest ones, but we need that money here. You take private transit away, we're hurting.
Yes.
We're hurting. Even on the Philly issue, the Pennsylvania's economy runs because of Philadelphia and the suburban counties. If they are doing well, the tax money that comes into the state that funds our schools and funds our roads and funds environmental protection and funds worker protection and all those things we depend on, we get the bulk of that money from Philadelphia and those 4 suburban counties because they are huge in terms of the economy. So if we hurt SEPTA, we cripple their economy and we will pay the price.
That is huge for our community to know.
Right. Yes, it is. And folks, some of us here in York County don't want to hear that, but that's the way it is. As my idol as a kid, Walter Cronkite, used to say, that's the way it is.
I remember that as well.
Okay.
So let's talk a little bit about education. You talked about taxation and the cyber charter schools, but what is your position on public school funding versus school choice?
I am not a supporter of school choice. Private schools are fine. I'm Catholic. We have St. Rose of Lima schools for my parish. We have York Catholic. They're great schools. They're fine. But they're private schools, and private schools, in my view, should be privately funded. And also, folks need to understand there is public money that goes to private schools now.
Right.
We fund transportation, we fund some textbooks. There's a tax credit program that folks can direct some of their state taxes to, and businesses can. So there's already public funding that goes to support these private schools, which again are fine schools. Many friends have children there or have had children there, but I believe public dollars are for public schools where still 90% of our students go. And I was kind of tickled to see a lot of postings on social media the last couple of days that the 4 Artemis 2 astronauts all went to public school.
Oh, nice. Do you have a plan to help make healthcare more affordable?
Well, that's a tough nut to crack, and the state can play a role, does play a role, although it's honestly, that's more of a national problem, a federal government problem. We have a good healthcare exchange here in Pennsylvania, Penny. I worked my last job at the state government. I was the press secretary at the insurance department, so I know how important that is. And so I think we need to keep working at that. I think there are things we can do. There are things that have been bouncing around Harrisburg for a long time, such as allowing physicians' assistants greater autonomy to practice. Right now, there's a law that says there has to be basically an attending physician physically present where that physician's assistant is. And I think we need to join a number of other states that allow those physicians' assistants to work under the supervision of a physician. They could be at a different physical location. They're still reporting to that person. The physician still has oversight. That would help lower the costs. It would help increase the availability of healthcare and lower those costs. And also certified registered nurse practitioners kind of fall into that same boat. Many of us have those as our healthcare providers we often see, but the costs are up because they have to be under that direct physical supervision of a physician. And I think we could loosen that without compromising patient care. We have to look at the reimbursements our hospitals get. That's tough. That's very expensive. The hospitals constantly complain that Medicare and Medicaid, which pay many of the hospital bills, their reimbursements are very low. But we have to, and it's got to mostly come from the federal government, but at the state level, we have to push them and make sure that our federal Congress people understand the importance of having health care, because when people have health care, they get preventive treatment. They are healthier. They have their annual checkups. Without that, they don't go to the doctor because they can't afford to. So they wait till they get very sick and they go to the emergency room. That's uncompensated care. And guess what? We all pay for that because our insurance rates go up. And that also hurts the hospitals. So to the extent we can put the pressure on the feds to do that and put state money into that we need to do that. But we're limited in the amount of money we have for that.
That's correct. Do you have any plan to address the rising costs in housing, groceries? And I think you did speak about utilities a little bit when you were speaking about the data centers. Right. But can you explain to the community your plan to try to reduce costs or inflation, or to make life more affordable for them?
Right. Well, we covered the data center issue. That's part of the electricity. But that, again, back to the supporting all of our energy sources here in Pennsylvania, because we need to generate more electricity, get more on the grid. That'll help keep those prices down. And for that, we need all forms of energy. In terms of housing, that is a tough one. The state can do some things there. One of the concerns that was brought to me by a realtor I know is that so many of these, they call them wholesalers. You've seen the ads on TV, Eric buys your house. They're taking a lot of the homes off the market. Now they flip them and resell them, but they're not always there for folks who may want to buy that house now. So I think we need to look at how many or what percentage of homes perhaps in a county that wholesalers should be allowed to have. And the federal government's even looking at outlawing the private equity funds from buying these homes. I think that's something we can definitely look at. Another thing that I've learned from my friend who's a realtor is that right now with the costs, and this is why I think Democrats are in good position this year, the tariffs have driven up the cost of building a home because so many of the products, lumber in particular, and steel, are way up there because of these tariffs. So the problem is builders are not building starter homes because they can't make money on them. If they build a $150,000 home in York County, they're going to lose money on that. So they're building the $250,000 and $350,000 homes because they're the ones that they can make money on. So I think we need to look as a state if there's something we can do to encourage the building of these more modest homes. I don't know what that would be in terms of the money, but a couple of ideas I've thought about are if we can find the funding in the state, and again, that's always a tricky part, but if we can do that, maybe we say, okay, here's the average home price, and this is what, if you can build a $150,000 home, but you're going to lose $20,000, maybe the state could subsidize that extra money to make that home worthwhile for the builder to build. And I think from the state level, too, as a township supervisor and a former township planning commission member for almost 2 decades, we need to encourage our municipalities to find ways to create more housing that fits what the need is in the community, a little more higher density housing, which tends to be more affordable. So whether there's duplexes, whether there are more apartments that folks can get started in as they're starting their lives, or townhomes, those types of things. I think in West Manchester Township, we're doing that now. We have some larger homes that are being constructed. We also have had some smaller homes. We have another small apartment complex going up. We're looking at doing some infill. We're looking at, as we update our zoning law now, we're looking at making more areas available for dual use, where you might have retail on the first floor and apartments above that to help folks. So the more at the state level we can encourage, and we can, the Department of Community and Economic Development works closely with local governments, the Governor's Center for Local Government Services. We can encourage our municipalities to create more of those affordable housing opportunities. I think that would go a long way.
Yeah, definitely the affordable housing, because even with this construction of duplexes or apartment buildings, they're not affordable to the average person. So, I mean, that's what many are being faced with. Now, I don't know if in the 196 you have an issue like the city may have, but of abandoned buildings or homes buildings or homes not in use. Do you have that?
We do, but I don't think it's nearly to the degree of the city. But it's an issue. That's largely a local government issue for the municipalities to deal with that. And in 196, it's there, but it's not a huge problem.
Because I remember I had a question for Carol of whether or not those buildings could be put to use for make more affordable housing, or again, your district may not have a unhoused issue or whatever, or not to the great extent as the city does. But you think of anything that where the state could help or give some funding or anything like that to your knowledge? And again, I know your knowledge will increase once you're there, because you'll know what more resources are available.
Again, I think I don't know that there's necessarily a program out there right now. I think they can encourage the municipalities to look at different ways of doing that. But I do think things like, increasing the dual use, like we're looking at more zoning areas where you can have the first floor commercial, the second floor where you can have housing. A lot of places that's not allowed. If it's retail, if it's commercial, here it's commercial, period.
Right.
So that would make some more affordable housing available. It's not going to solve the entire problem, but I think it will help.
Okay. What do you think about the security of Pennsylvania elections?
Pennsylvania's elections are safe and fair. They are secure. I worked at the Department of State. I was the press secretary there for 4 years, so I got an up-close and personal look. And our elections across Pennsylvania, and certainly here in York County, are conducted fairly, and your vote is safe and secure, whether you mail it in or whether you do it in person. Now, I do support voter ID, because I saw in 2012, Pennsylvania had a voter ID law for about 6 months until the courts threw it out. That's during my time at the Department of State. So I was able to see in a first-hand look, even a law that wasn't the best. It was not the law I would have crafted or would craft today if I had the chance. But even there, I saw that folks who wanted an ID could get one. The reason I support that is I do believe that there is not an issue with voter fraud. Okay, it is very, very, very rare, and it has not impacted any election that I have ever been aware of in Pennsylvania. So let's get that out there. I think it would give an extra layer of security, and it would make those folks who, just because they had genuine concerns or because of the lies they have been fed over the last 6 years about the safety of elections, it would make a lot of people feel better about it. And it would take away one of those points of argument that the elections maybe aren't fair if folks have an ID. And we can do it in a way that would be very, very easy and not a burden for folks to do it. What we ended up doing at the Department of State, finally, when we went through some iterations during that court case, we finally got to the point where we said if you don't have an ID, which we found to be fewer, I should say, than 1% of the voters across Pennsylvania didn't have an acceptable ID. For most folks, it'll be the driver's license, but not everybody has one. Then and I think we should make it easy and available. Go to your state legislator's office, go to any state government office, or do it online, or mail in a thing to the Department of State and say, I need an ID, here's my information, and they make you, and you go somewhere to get your photo, they send you an ID. We can do it to make it very, very easy to get it. But our elections are safe, they are secure. The stuff that folks talk about, these elections being stolen, I can tell you folks, having worked in the Department of State for 4 years, it cannot happen. Each voter has a unique barcode that is with their ID. And when you go to vote, that barcode is used and it's crossed off. And if someone else tries to use your name or your ID, it's not going to go. It's not going to happen. So physically, it just cannot happen. Beyond that, if there was this vast conspiracy, you would have to have thousands of people in on it, from the precinct level to the county level to the state level, and nobody's talking. I mean, Sandra and I couldn't keep a secret till tomorrow between the two of us. I mean, it's just really, it's nonsensical. So trust the electoral process, trust the elections. I would favor early in-person voting. I favor mail voting. I favor secure and monitored drop boxes. We can do all those things. There are states out west, the progressive state of Utah does their elections entirely by mail. Have for years. Oregon does. So it's safe and secure. We need to make voting easy, accessible, and it is safe and secure. Trust the electoral process.
So speaking about the voter ID, because again, all the things you said in reference to how safe and secure our Pennsylvania electoral process is for voting is one of the key reasons of why the voter ID bill was struck down, coupled with the fact that it actually was very hard for some people to get ID. And since we had a secure system and there was some problems with people getting ID, it was like, we don't want any voter to be disenfranchised. And more particularly, especially, say, I believe, I'm going by memory right now, one of the key plaintiffs against the voter ID bill was an older Black woman, and I think she was over 90 years old.
She was.
And back then, they didn't give ID.
She was in North Carolina.
Yeah,
in
that's
1925.
correct.
She did not get a birth certificate.
That's correct. And so she had no proof of birth. And currently, as you know, and you probably know better than I know, currently you have to prove your identity when you register to vote, and you have to prove your identity the first time you vote at your polling location,
Right.
and you have to prove your identity every time you choose or move
Yes.
to another polling location. And so it could be electric bill or something like that. And I think one of the things that you said about, you said you scanned the security bar or something like that.
Yeah, there's a barcode.
Right, the barcode.
That's right.
You can, so if somebody else used that, they can only vote once.
Right.
So there's only one vote per person.
There is.
So that's another reason why that was struck. And until we can fix all of those issues to make sure that every single person can get an acceptable ID, so that law would have to be so broad.
Well, I think, but there are states that have voter ID laws, and they've been upheld. And I would just say, now, not to be argumentative, but
This is we're talking.
the woman you spoke about, the 92-year-old woman from Philadelphia who was a lead plaintiff, got her ID. She did, and a reporter from the Inquirer went with her.
Right.
And she used SEPTA to get around. That's how she got on a bus. She went 10 minutes. She transferred. She went to the PennDOT. It took her less than an hour. And she didn't have a birth certificate. That's right, because they just didn't give birth certificates to Black people in North Carolina in the 20s. She presented other options, and she came out, and I remember the big front page picture on the Philadelphia Inquirer was her holding up her
Right.
ID. So 9 of the 10 plaintiffs in that lawsuit got their IDs. The only one who didn't was a woman whose daughter was a lawyer who was very much against the law and told her mother, don't get one.
Right.
She would have gotten one at her assisted living facility, which she could have gotten. But it needs to be easy. It needs to be simple, and we can't have any disenfranchisement. And let me also say, the SAVE Act is not voter ID. It is voter suppression. So I am 100% against the SAVE Act. That is a bunch of baloney.
I was going to ask you, but I'm like, federal, state, but I was going to ask you about the SAVE Act. So the only other thing I'm going to add to that is by that time, she had so many advocates. She had attorneys, she had press following her, so she had so many people to direct her, and the issue is the people who are out there in the community that have that same demographic that don't have that community of support, that they still may want to vote, but they still don't have all those people telling them how to do this, how to do that, how to go get your ID from another state. So again, I hear you though.
Yeah, but as you said though, you have to show it the first time, and if you move, you have to show it. So if you're able to do it, then I think you can do it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's right, but I think it's what qualifies as well. Yeah, it's what qualifies as an ID.
Yeah.
So if you have a phone bill, if you have an electric bill, if you have a lease, those types of things, and I think they were. And again, I'm just going by memory where my memory could be wrong, but they were asking for some more stringent, like I think one of you said, PennDOT generated ID, school, military.
Yeah, there were a lot of different options, but I believe it can be crafted in a way that it's easy, it's free, and it's not a burden, and that will make everybody feel better.
And I think if all of those hurdles are jumped and we can see that there's no person left to be counted out, then I guess there will be no more argument.
I would hope, and that would be my goal. I would not support something I felt disenfranchised people.
Absolutely. Do you have a position on any firearm policies?
That is a big issue in my district.
Yes.
A lot of people ask me about that, and I believe the things we really need to do to under the Second Amendment, and also our Pennsylvania Constitution, which guarantees the right to bear arms for law-abiding citizens.
Right.
So the two things we need to really help in that area and make our community safer while not infringing on any law-abiding gun owners' rights are to have universal background checks. Wherever you buy a gun, you have a background check. That will help keep guns out of the hands of convicted felons who are not to have them. By their own actions, they have proven themselves not to be law-abiding citizens. And the other big thing is to have good and enforced red flag laws, where someone who has been determined by a court after a proper and a fair adjudication that they are a danger to themselves or to others, because a lot of folks have mental health issues, okay? They should not have guns. And people who have protection from abuse orders. Again, adjudicated by a court of law that says this person, at least at this time, has shown that they are not a law-abiding citizen, so they cannot possess a firearm. Because more than 200 people in Pennsylvania are killed every year by people who have PFAs against them. And most of those are with guns. So those are the things that we need to do, and I would support those laws, the universal background checks and the red flag laws. That keeps the guns out of hands of people who legally should not have them and does not infringe on the rights of law-abiding gun owners.
So you mentioned felons, that's persons who are convicted of crimes that are a felony. Do you believe in any re-entry programs, or is there a time where, again, they could be rehabilitated?
I think most people can be rehabilitated. And that's one of the things that is an ongoing debate. And one of the areas where there has been bipartisan cooperation in Harrisburg in the last several years has been reforming some of our corrections laws. We've expunged the criminal records of people after a period of time because they couldn't get jobs. So people come out of jail, and what are they going to do? They can't work in many of these places because they can't get these licenses. And so what are they going to do? They return to a life of crime. And so there was good bipartisan cooperation to reform those laws, and they're still working on other reforms there, such as these life without parole, that sort of thing. And there's a Republican senator from Western Pennsylvania who said it's the Department of Corrections. Well, if we feel it can't be rehabilitated, what are we correcting?
Right.
So I'm a big believer in second chances. And so I think almost everyone can be rehabilitated. Now, look, there are people that they've committed a murder, and it's a heinous murder, and but absent that, I think most people can be rehabilitated. And one of the things I was a small part of at the insurance department is there is a program where the different state agencies do go into the prisons to work with people who are going to be coming out, because especially people who've been in there for a long time,
Right.
they don't have the skills to survive. We were this goes back about 8 or 9 years. There were folks who've been incarcerated for 20 to 25 years. They never used a cell phone. Okay, they had no idea how to use maybe even an ATM. Those types of things. So you've got to help those folks be able to come back and readjust and live and be productive in society to give them that opportunity. So there have to be reentry programs. And most folks are not in there for murder or rape or other really heinous crimes.
Right.
They've done something wrong, and they paid their due. They paid their debt to society, and now they need a second chance.
Okay. Where do you stand on abortion rights on the state level?
I support Pennsylvania's abortion law as it stands now, which is legal abortion with restrictions, time restrictions. I think what we really need to do, though, if we want to reduce abortions, and I think most people probably do, because it has to be a terrible decision to make. We need to, as a society, be more supportive of the woman and her child during pregnancy and after. And if women know that they're going to have support, they're going to be able to feed their child. So we can't be cutting SNAP benefits. If they're going to be able to get health care for their child. So most people on Medicaid work. That's a myth. That's a big myth. 93 to 94% of people receiving Medicaid are working. They just don't make enough money to pay for, they don't have health insurance from their work. If we let women know, if you have this child, you and the child will have health care. A chip is there for children, but there's still a cost to that. And if we let them know that the woman has perhaps been unhoused for periods of time. We're going to provide some kind of assistance so she knows her child and she will have a roof over their head. We're going to enforce those PFAs because a lot of times those women are harmed because their partner doesn't want that child.
Right.
If we do all those things, and we also make adoption a more plausible alternative, make it easier, make it cheaper, and celebrate a woman who makes the terrible decision to say, I can't care for this child, I'm going to give it to someone else who can. If we want to reduce abortion, that's how we're going to do it. So I support our current law, but I would love to get people and sit down around the table and say, how can we support women who perhaps want to have this child, just don't feel that they have the means to support that child. And if they want to do that, let's help them.
So you spoke, of course, about helping people to be more self-sufficient. What is your stand on the minimum wage?
We need to raise the minimum wage in Pennsylvania. It's been 17 years. It's way past time. I don't know that I have an exact idea of what that ought to be. I think it needs to be incremental. I'm not necessarily in favor of going right to $15 an hour. I think we need to move it up over a period of a few years to get to a better living wage. But at $7.25 right now, and there are people who make that. I think the last figure I saw was more than 60,000 people in Pennsylvania make that. And you can't live on that. And we need to raise that minimum wage. We absolutely need to do that for workers to have a shot at having a living wage. As Governor Shapiro said, if we raise that minimum wage, we're going to save tax money because more of those people then will move off of having to get public assistance. So it would help not only the people who will get paid more, and it will help our economy because they'll have more money to spend throughout the economy, and we'll be spending fewer tax dollars because they won't need the help.
Okay. So what is your stand on Pennsylvania's current definition for marriage and expanding it or not?
I think I support gay marriage.
Okay.
I do support gay marriage, absolutely. It's the law of the land because it's Supreme Court ruling. I know there have been bills to change Pennsylvania's law from the 90s, which said marriage is between a man and a woman. Look, who you love, that's up to you. And this is a civil arrangement. And so I would support those laws that expand the definition of marriage.
Do you have any position on, and again, from the state level, of what can be done to protect the rights of immigrants, even those that are undocumented?
That is largely a federal issue, but I recently at West Manchester Township helped to defeat a proposal for our police department to sign an agreement with ICE. That's not our job to enforce that law. Obviously, if there's a violent criminal, if ICE calls and says, hey, we have a warrant for this person who we believe committed a murder or a rape in Virginia and we think they're in your township, of course our police would look for them and apprehend them and turn them over as they would any other agency. Or if someone here is arrested for a violent crime and they're here illegally, then one of the things they face is deportation. I don't think anyone's arguing that. But I would definitely not encourage any local police department to go looking for folks who've been in our community for years or decades. We don't know why they came here. Most of them came here because they couldn't feed their families. And I'm a father, I would have done anything to take care of my daughter. I would have crossed any border in the world, legally or illegally, if I couldn't feed her, or if we were being menaced by drug gangs, which happens in many of the countries why people come here, or an autocratic regime that is killing people. So again, it's going back to a question you asked me earlier about my faith. My faith says what Jesus said, I'm a Christian. He said, take care of the foreigner. Treat them as you would yourself. And he also said, what you do to the least of my people, you do to me. And so I think we need to be very compassionate. We need to look at what those people have done as members of our community. And we need to work for a sane immigration policy that allows asylum seekers who prove they need it, also allows a certain number of immigrants every year. And for those folks who've been here for a long time, we need to come up with a rational path for them to stay. To the extent the state can do that, it's largely a federal policy, but I am opposed to our local police forces doing the job that we're paying $110 billion for ICE to do. That's their job, not ours.
What we're finding currently is that people who may be undocumented and here, and as you said, maybe for years, for various reasons, as you stated, and they are being victimized by people. It could be landlords, it could be their spouse or paramour, and they're too afraid to access the courts. And even if they filed, say, for PFA, then they don't want to show up at the courts because of ICE working with the sheriffs or somebody else. So on a state level, would you look at legislation, because I do believe that there are some representatives who are looking at that to make sure that courts and services like that remain accessible even to the undocumented. How would you would you not support those type of measures?
I would, and I'm not familiar with those specific instances, so that will be in one of those areas where I would need to be educated when I get to Harrisburg. But yeah, just whatever your status is here, you should not be fearful for your life. And so if you can show that you need a PFA against someone or whatever other situation, you should be able to get that. So I would certainly be inclined to support those pending the specifics, but I would absolutely be open to those types of protections.
Okay. And again, throughout this discussion, you spoke a lot about reaching across the aisle, because all of your positions, you work with so many different people, irrespective of their registration. As you go to Harrisburg, what would compromise look like?
I could look at a lot of different ways. I go back to the reforms in our penal system that we saw folks reach across the aisle. Representative Harris from Philadelphia and Representative Delozier from the Harrisburg West Shore worked together on that very, very well. So I think those are areas where folks can see that there's a need to do that. I have a property tax reform bill. A couple of other, a senator and a representative from York County Republicans are supporting a different property tax bill that would eliminate it completely for school taxes. I don't support their bill as it is, but I support portions of it. Because one of the things they would do in their bill, I believe, if I recall correctly, is eliminate some of the exemptions in our state sales tax. I've been for that for a long time. You know, candy is exempt from our sales tax. It was supposed to be staple food and clothing. Okay?
Yes.
Look, I love Hershey bars, I love peanut butter cups, but I'll pay the 6%.
Sometimes chocolate is a necessity.
It is, right. I'm with you there. But you know, those, and I know when I worked in Harrisburg for a long time, there were studies done that if we got back to that, the food, food that's like on the WIC list, the basic food that's, that is for a healthy diet, and clothing, we could have a 4% sales tax and still bring in the money to do it 6% now. So that's an idea where I would love to sit down with them and say, here's my idea. Here's your idea. Where can we come together? We've got some common elements here. Can we come to the middle on that? Again, with the transportation funding, I would love to go to my friends in the rural areas of the state and say, okay, how can we work this? One of the things the Republicans have said, we need to get more money for roads along with that. Okay, let's figure out how to do that. How do we do that? Look for those areas in common where we can work across the aisle to meet the needs of both. And in my district, we've got both. We don't necessarily have an urban area, but where I live, West Manchester Township, that's not a rural township. We're a built-up township, Dover Township largely. Parts of Dover are very rural, but parts of it along 74 are built up. So, we've got both, and we've got rural areas. So we need to address both of those because, as we discussed earlier, there are a lot of people in this district who depend on rapid transit. And there are other folks who live out in more rural areas who depend on good roads. So let's find a way that this transit funding can address all of those needs. It's not easy, but if we go into it with good faith, I think we can do it more than we're doing it today.
Absolutely. So are there any bright lines that you would not cross that you can think of?
Well, I certainly couldn't compromise away what I consider basic rights for people. And, I think right now a lot of folks in various communities are feeling under assault. And, we talked about marriage for one, but, I think we should expand our civil rights laws to protect gay, LGBTQ citizens.
Right.
Because right now you can be denied an apartment for being gay. And I think that's wrong. So I think those are lines where it's basic human dignity, basic human rights, that I would find it very difficult to compromise because it's not what I believe in and it's not what my faith teaches either. we're all equal, we're all to be treated equally. So that would be one area where I would find it very, very difficult to compromise, because I just think it's plain wrong.
So what would you say to the lifelong self-identified as a conservative Republican as to why you are the right choice?
We have a lot in common. I am a staunch advocate for small businesses. I am supporting right now Jim and Nina's Pizza in New Salem. They're going to redo that intersection, which anybody who drives through there at peak times, you know how bad it is. They're going to realign it. They're going to change the cycle on the lights. But they have to take one property to do that, and that unfortunately is the property where Jim and Nina's sits. I went to an open house proactively in December of last year because I knew I was running for the seat. That's part of this district, to find out more about that. And the owner, Jim and Nina's, was there, and he was talking to PennDOT about the possibility of having them take a portion of that property, but it's a large enough property, he believes, that they could take what they need to realign the intersection, and he could then physically move the building on that property, and there would still be a large enough property existing that he could run that business there. The question is, can PennDOT just take a small enough area to meet their needs and leave him enough to run the business, and will he get enough through the eminent domain payment to allow him to pay to move that building? And I met him that night, and I told him then, if I get this job, I will fight for you, because we need to fight for our small businesses. That's a backbone of that community. It provides jobs, tax revenue, and oh, by the way, pretty good pizza too. But that's an example, and he's supporting me. He is absolutely supporting me. He is a Republican in West Manchester Township. Another Republican business family that's supporting me is because I went to bat for them. This person was ready to open a business. We hired a third party. We have a third party inspector that does the inspections of facilities when they're ready to open. This person wasn't doing the job. He wasn't returning calls, emails. This person was ready to open. He was waiting a month, couldn't get a response. He came to me, and I went to the township and said, what the heck is going on? And I came to find that this person wasn't even responding to us. So we finally lit a fire under this guy, got him to do the inspections, and then we fired him, because we can't have that. So that's another example of where I stand up for businesses. I support the Right to Repair Act. That would allow your local mechanic. We have a great friend of ours, another Republican business person who lives in this district, who supports me, because you should be able to go to any repair shop and get that repair done, not just have to go to your dealer. So I support our local businesses. I support keeping our local businesses viable. I support reasonable public safety measures. I work to compromise with our fire department to improve safety but avoid a costly mandate on our small businesses, and that was very important. And I would say to those conservative Republicans, that's my record. That is my record of standing up for business people, and I will continue to do that. I have a plan to reduce property taxes. That's something conservatives want. I don't take health insurance from the township. That's offered to us as part-time supervisors. I think it's wrong. That's a benefit that I don't think most part-time employees have, let alone part-time elected supervisors. That saves us tax money by not doing that. And so I would contain costs by saying those types of things, those types of perks need to go. So there's a lot of things that I have done and I do support that would fit in very well with a conservative, fiscally responsible individual, someone who is a staunch supporter of businesses, especially our small businesses, but also our large businesses, as we talked earlier. Avoid hydro. Supporting renewable energy supports jobs in our community, as well as helping to have more affordable energy. And I think that's something that conservatives can absolutely rally behind.
What is your closing vision of why the voters out there should vote for you on May 19th?
I'm someone who will truly represent everyone. I don't need this, okay? I'm 66 years old. This is not going to be a career for me. I would serve at most 5 terms. I think we do need to have term limits. I didn't believe that at first, but I think we need it. But I have someone who will truly represent everyone. It's what I have done as a township supervisor. When folks come to me with an issue, if I can help them with it, I do. And I don't care who they are. I know some people who have been very conservative who have come to me, other folks who are very progressive. A lot of people, I have no idea, because I didn't meet them before they came to me for the issue. I am someone who truly will listen to everyone and truly represent everyone. We need to do that. We need to. And I don't think a lot of our folks in Harrisburg are doing that anymore. They take care of their people. And I don't mean that in quite as negative a way as I'm saying it, but they're so tied into an ideology but they're only gonna fight for those folks who believe in their ideology. And that's not me. I want to be a different type of representative, and I'm going to do that. And you know what? If it costs me a re-election, so be it. I'm not in this for a career. I've had a great career in television news and in press secretary work serving at the state level. And I served under 4 governors, 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats, Ridge, Rendell, Corbett, and Wolf. They all trusted me to deliver for all Pennsylvanians in important roles. I was a spokesperson for 3 different state agencies. I was talking to media throughout Pennsylvania, across the country, and throughout the world. Voter ID, that was a worldwide story. When the Q Creek miners were underground out in Somerset County, I was at DEP. That was a worldwide story. Those governors trusted me to deliver for all Pennsylvanians. And you can trust me to deliver for all of you too. It's what I've done throughout my career. It is what I will do for you.
And what is your ask?
My ask is that folks consider that. They consider who you want to stand up for you, who you want to fight for you, who you want to be on your side. Someone who went proactively the week before Christmas down to a meeting in New Salem. Find out about what was going on with that intersection there. And that's where I met this person whose business is being threatened. And I saw an opportunity as a state representative to fight with him in a very plausible way to keep his business open. Not just for him and for his employees, but I've heard from so many people since then how important that restaurant is to the small community of New Salem. It's a gathering place. It's been there for years and years. People want it. So I ask you to consider someone who's going to go out of his way to find issues and find ways to solve those issues. I think that's important. Not everything a representative does is voting on big legislation in Harrisburg. A lot of it is finding out issues that are happening in the community, like Jim and Nina's Pizza in New Salem being threatened, and going out and proactively finding that person and saying, hey pal, you're going to have an ally with me. And I've already contacted the office of the State House Transportation Committee Chairman, just to let him know, if I get elected, the first time I meet you, that's what we're going to talk about, because I want you on our side too. I want someone who will advocate for you when you need that. I'm asking you to vote for me in that special election, May 19th. Independents especially, I want you to be able to vote in all primary elections. Republicans, I'm someone you can trust, like Governors Ridge and Corbett did. You can trust me to be there for you, as I have been for small businesses in West Manchester and throughout this district. So I'm asking you to consider all those things and cast a vote for me.
And Democrats?
Democrats should, the same things really. A lot of those things, those aren't really Democratic or Republican issues, because there are an awful lot of Democrats who run small businesses too. So I'm going to be there for you. But I will be there to treat every person with respect and dignity. I cannot and will not be part of a group that looks to demonize different groups within our society and find reasons to make them objects of derision. Now, DEI is very unpopular these days, but I don't think it should be. Diversity, equity, and inclusion are good things. We've replaced them with 3 other letters, HEP, hate, exclusion, and persecution, and that's wrong. That is just wrong. So for some of the progressive Democrats, I'm someone who will fight along with you to include everyone. Yes, everyone should be judged on merit. Absolutely judged on merit. But that has to include everyone. And you can't have laws that say, I can refuse to rent a room to you because you're gay, or because I think you're gay. How do you prove you're not? And I think those types of things that, on a social issue as a Democrat, you can look to me. And both folks can look to me for a reasonable increase in the minimum wage, for expanding our economy like we've talked about tonight, standing up for small businesses, larger businesses like Voith Hydro, which is a huge company within our district, but it's also a renewable energy company. So folks across the spectrum can support that.
And as you said in reference to DEI, they have to be allowed in the room and allowed at the table to equally compete.
That's it.
So that's all it
exactly
is.
right.
Exactly.
Yeah. I mean, you're not going to get the job because of your color or because you're gay or whatever, but you need to have an equal seat at the table to have the opportunity to show you deserve that job.
Absolutely. So this has been Flip the 196 Straight Talk with Ron Ruman, Democratic candidate for the Pennsylvania House for 196th District, Legislative District. And this has been SADOC with Sandra. Remember, your mind is a weapon. When you pursue education and aim for elevation and channel your creativity into empowerment, then no door can hold you and no one can stop you. Your mouth is a weapon that can slay your doubts and your fears. Speak life to yourself. Like, subscribe, comment. See you the next time.
To whoever may need this nugget of encouragement, things will be alright, so quit your worry. I get it, the odds can stack back against the wall, but even consider it such, know you'll stand tall. Sat and watched from the sidelines, went too many times. Wicked games to play, make me wanna lose my mind. Found solitude, knowing it'll be over soon. Ever need a boost, count on me for the 1-2. Trouble don't last when the tough get going. Baby, all we do is win, so show me my opponent. Adversity, doubt, stress, could care less, cause how we handle those like an S on our chest.